by my clock, even if the town hall says it's 11:05. We'll go on a watch, I think. So very much good evening to you, to not only the officers, council members and members of the public. For the purpose of this recording, I'm going to introduce everybody, as I always do. My name's Councillor White. I'm John White and I'm chairman. The other councillors taking part, and I'll go round alphabetically to them, starting with Councillor Alexander. Councillor Baker.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Codling.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Fowler.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Guglielmi. Councillor Harris.
Evening, Chairman.
Councillor Placey.
Evening, Chair.
And Councillor Wiggins.
Evening, Chairman.
TDC officers assisting us this evening are the Acting Director of Planning, the Assistant Director of Planning Operations, Planning Manager, Planning Solicitor, Planning Officers and the committee staff. Public speaking tonight will be as usual in that I shall ask the officer to introduce the application, to show any photos, videos, etc. And then we'll go to public speaking, which, as usual, I shall ask the applicant to speak first, and then I shall ask any members of the public who have previously asked to speak, either for or against the application. This will be followed by any speakers from the town or parish council, and then finally the ward councillors will have their chance to question us. Once all questions are answered, we will, officer, will then turn it to questions from the full debate. We've got to call for a proposer and seconder. Should any member of the public like to follow this meeting, it can be found on the internet by logging into www.tenderingdc.gov.uk/live meetings. And I turn to the officer to make sure that we are going live. I can't quite see him from here, but I believe we are from the picture that I can just see. Right, not only of course is it going out live, but it is recorded by the council and will be available on the council website. Now, if we turn to item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I'm pleased to say there are none. Item 2 on the agenda, we've got the minutes of the 1st of September. But at this late hour, the solicitor spotted an omission. So I'm going to ask that when you vote for this item, you include the addition, a copy of which, members, you have got in front of you. And the same omission applies to item 9 on the blue pages. So when we get to this item, I shall ask you to add it to the board and National Grid. But I'm not predetermined on the application that comes up in front of us tonight and intend to vote on it. No other declarations? Questions to me under Procedure 37? There are none. Planning application then, we move to item 5. It's application 21/02070 full. This is land adjacent to Lawford Grid substation. And tonight, can I ask the planning officer, Mrs. Amy Lang, to bring that to our attention, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Evening, members. Right, just bear with me while I share my screen. Shall I move it? better? Yeah? Okay. Right. Okay, so this application has been made by Lawford Power Limited, seeking and the embedded storm system on the station south of and Little Bromley Road. The works also include a new access, landscaping and drainage system. The application is before members at the request of the Assistant Director of Planning due to the wider public interest and the proposal being the first of its kind in tendering. So this first slide shows you the location of the site in relation to both Ardleigh and Little Bromley parish boundaries. The site falls within Ardleigh but is directly adjacent to Little Bromley, and both parish councils have been consulted on the application. This slide shows the extent of the site area, including the access to the public highway, which amounts to 1.15 hectares. The site currently comprises cultivated agricultural land. This aerial image shows the location of the site with a bit more context. Lawford substation being directly to the east, covering approximately 3.3 hectares, and the nearest dwelling is approximately 240 metres to the southwest, shown there by the yellow arrow. Okay, moving on to images of the site and surroundings. This first view is looking west towards the existing Lawford substation, almost fully screened by the established planting. This is a view into the existing Lawford substation access. This image is a partial view into the existing substation, with the application site being beyond. This is a view from Little Bromley Road or Ardleigh Road of Lawford substation, directly adjacent to the left of the image, and then straight ahead of you would be the site location. And finally, this image is looking east towards the existing substation again. The site location would be to the right of this image. Again, you can see the established planting around the existing substation. The pylons you can see there are located within the existing site. This is a block plan just showing an overview of the site layout in relation to the proposed access, and again the adjacent substation could be seen. This plan also shows an overview of the SUD system, which incorporates French drains and will discharge the local ditch system via a swale along the eastern site boundary. This is a more detailed view of the site layout, excluding the access area. So a battery energy storage system can be understood as a balancing service that will assist with the operation of the grid at times of system stress. The compound will comprise of the battery storage area, or BESS, as referred to in the report, the distribution network operators compound, referred to as the DNO in the report, and the customer compound, including associated control buildings, storage containers, and also the laying out of the access and compound surfacing is included in there. You can see the access roads. So the connecting cable will be delivered by UK Power Networks under their permitted development rights as a statutory undertaker. I've included some plans of the proposed equipment, just some extracts really, it's not the full plans. So this is an example of the battery units and elevations. That's a plan view, and then you've got some elevations there. This is the DNO compound plan and elevations. This is sited towards the rear of the site and is the highest of the equipment proposed. And here's an example of one of the control buildings. Okay, so I've included the site elevation. So this shows all of the equipment and fencing in situ without any landscaping shown on here. This gives you an indication of the varying heights and the compound and the buildings, what will be seen and the differences between each of the fence lines. So the highest piece of equipment, as I mentioned previously, is the power transformer and switchyard plant at the back of the site, which is 6.35 metres in height. Just go to the next, south and west elevations. This is an illustrative elevation which shows the development in situ with fully established planting. I've also included an extract from the landscape visual impact assessment and included, excuse me, the photo images as well. So if members want to go back over these or refer to any of them at any point, please let me know. But I think the images that I've included up here probably give you a bit more of what you need to know because it's directly adjacent to the application site. Okay, so turning to the merits of the application, firstly, the principle of development. Adopted local plan policy PPL 10 is of particular relevance with this case. This deals with renewable energy generation and energy efficiency measures. Battery storage systems are identified within the supporting text of policy PPL 10 as one of the supported technologies aimed at maximising energy efficiency. The proposal is therefore considered acceptable in principle, subject to the scale and impact of the proposal and all other relevant material planning considerations, which I'll go through. Okay, so access and highway safety. The applicant has demonstrated that the proposed access will have adequate visibility and will provide adequate off-street parking and turning, while the overall scheme is set back from the main public highway and does not directly affect any public rights of way. HGVs will only visit the site during construction and can access and egress the site safely. Its projected construction will be completed within approximately 12 months of commencement. And then during the operational phase, it's expected that the compound will generate 1 to 2 maintenance visits per month in a light goods vehicle, not HGV. So the Highway Authority originally raised concerns in relation to the construction phase of the scheme, specifically the routing strategy for HGVs submitted with the application. After several discussions with the Highway Authority, Highways officers are now satisfied that the development can be made acceptable in Highways terms through the imposition of conditions, including a revised HGV routing strategy, and that forms part of the recommended conditions at the end of the report. In terms of the landscape and visual impact, the site location is considered to be the most suitable and practical, being closely related to the existing substation to which it's to connect. The application is accompanied by appropriate technical reports, including a landscape visual impact assessment and a comprehensive landscaping scheme. Once fully established, this will ensure the development will assimilate into the surroundings without resulting in any overriding harm on the landscape or the character of the area. The accompanying tree report also demonstrates that the development can take place without causing any harm to the important trees on the land adjacent to the site. Next up, heritage impact. Consultation with Place Services Heritage has been undertaken. Their view is that the topography of the site, distance to designated and non-designated heritage assets, mature trees throughout the landscape, and the presence of Lawford Grid substation and associated infrastructure means that the intervisibility between the proposed site and the heritage assets is mostly limited to long distance glances. Taking a balanced view, as required by national and local policy, officers are satisfied that the level of harm from long distance views only does not justify a refusal of planning permission based on the impact on the setting of heritage assets. Next issue is the biodiversity impact. So a review of the accompanying ecology assessment has been undertaken in consultation with Place Services Ecology, who have confirmed that sufficient ecological information has been provided with the application. This provides us, as the LPA, certainty of the likely impacts, and with appropriate mitigation measures secured by conditions, the development can be made acceptable. Contamination and noise. Noise assessment has been submitted with the application together with a Phase 1 contaminated land report. These have both been reviewed by the Council's Environmental Protection team, and based on the findings of the report, Environmental Protection raised no objection, again subject to conditions. In regard to residential amenities, as previously mentioned, the closest existing residential dwelling lies approximately 240 metres to the southwest. The application provides sufficient evidence within the noise report that the development will not result in any material harm to residential amenities from operational use. The Lead Flood Authority have reviewed the accompanying flood risk assessment and associated documents, and also raised no objection, subject to conditions securing a detailed surface water drainage system for the site, and there are no foul sewage disposal requirements associated with development. In regard to archaeology, consultation with Place Services has identified that the site lies adjacent to a site recorded as containing linear crop mark features. There is potential that currently unidentified heritage assets may be impacted by the proposal, and the applicant is required to carry out an evaluation to determine the significance of any heritage assets that may be affected. These requirements again can be secured by planning conditions. Turning to the representations and objections that we've received in relation to the application, as I mentioned previously, both Little Bromley and Ardleigh Parish Council have been consulted on the application due to the location. Little Bromley Parish Council support the application. However, Ardleigh Parish Council and a number of local residents do raise concerns. The majority of those objections relate to the development being linked to the East Anglia Green Energy Enablement Project, also known as the East Anglia Green Project. The objections also relate to access and highway safety, residential amenities, and harm to biodiversity and landscape impact. So the National Grid have confirmed that this development is not associated with the East Anglia Green Project. Access, construction traffic, and highway safety can be sufficiently controlled and managed by planning conditions in consultation with the Highway Authority. Temporary disruption during construction is not a justifiable reason for refusal. Supporting reports satisfactorily address the biodiversity and landscape impact matters. So overall, the proposal will provide a flexible backup power to the grid related to both local and national energy demand, being in accordance with adopted local plan policy PPL 10. This benefit weighs heavily in favour of the application. Through the submission of supporting reports and in the absence of any objections from statutory consultees, the application satisfactorily demonstrates that all relevant material planning considerations can be managed and controlled by planning conditions. Having regard to all the matters addressed within the officer report and this presentation, officers consider the benefits of the proposal outweigh any harm. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out within paragraph 8.2 of the report. Members are also asked to note the content of the update sheet in relation to this application. The updates do not alter the above conclusions and recommendations, but I can go through those in further detail if required. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right, on to public speaking. And we have the applicant, Mr. Neil Waterson. So, Mr. Waterson, if you could come forward to that microphone. Once you've got it switched on and settled, you've got, sorry, I've got a scream on the hearing aids. You've got 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. The application before you today is a sustainable development that will support the transition of the UK's energy supply to a low-carbon energy network in accordance with the Council's own Climate Emergency Action Plan and help address the current energy crisis. Battery and other forms of energy storage have been specifically identified by the government, along with various other bodies, including National Grid, as a key part of the strategy for decarbonising the energy network and achieving the UK's net zero commitments. Consequently, both the NPPF and the local plan support renewable energy and low carbon development in principle, subject to ensuring that the impacts of development are or can be made acceptable. Accordingly, the site has been selected and the proposals developed to ensure that the impacts of the scheme will be acceptable, being located close to the point of connection to the substation, located away from residential properties and any environmental designations, and on a site with mature landscaping on 2 sides to provide screening, supplemented by new planting around the perimeter. The loss of agricultural land will be limited, with the majority of the field retained for crops. In terms of construction traffic, any impacts will be for a temporary period of 9 to 12 months, with only 1 to 2 deliveries a day for the majority of this period. In addition, a range of mitigation measures and management measures will be put in place, restricting delivery hours to outside peak hours, routing restrictions, and putting in temporary passing bays, along with use of vehicle escorts and banksment for larger vehicles. These measures will be secured through a condition requiring approval of a construction traffic management plan prior to the start of development, as proposed by the Highway Authority, who have raised no objections. The details will be developed further once a contractor has been appointed. It's also important to emphasise that, as confirmed by National Grid, our proposed battery storage facility is completely unrelated to the National Grid East Anglia Green pylon proposals or any other energy proposals. Our battery storage facility connects directly to the UKPN substation and supports the operation and viability of the local district network, as well as the wider grid. It is viable on its own terms and can proceed and is needed irrespective of whether any other developments come forward. In addition to the benefits in terms of addressing the transition to a low carbon energy network and zero carbon objectives, the scheme includes significant new landscaping and SUDS features that will deliver a net gain in biodiversity in excess of 10%. We therefore consider that the proposals comply with the development plan taken as a whole and the NPPF, and there are no adverse impacts or other material planning considerations that would outweigh the benefits. And we therefore respectfully request members to approve this application before you.
Thank you very much, sir. That's got into that. So, members, it's question time to the officer.
Thank you, Chairman. In the excuse me, in the highways response, the latest comments from May 22, which is on page 23, number 7, says to restrict deliveries between the hours of 9:30 to 3:30. 9:30 to midday. I do know amended condition 8 on our update sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so the approach with the conditions here is the fact that the HGV movements and strategy submitted with the application was considered unacceptable by the Highway Authority. So we've imposed a full revised condition for the traffic management plan, which incorporates everything we need all as one document, including deliveries and HGV movements. The reason that condition hasn't been imposed directly into the conditions is just to try and maintain that flexibility, because if the revised HGV strategy and routing plan alters the needs of those hours, we can obviously address that as part of the discharge condition. However, as part of that discharge condition, officers would go back and consider all of the original comments of the Highway Authority and make sure that the timings are incorporated into that new report. And as I said, we would consult with the Highway Authority anyway to double check that, again, everything is in compliance with their recommendations from the original application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. No further questions this time.
Further questions? Yes. Councillor Harris.
If you look at them and they're not surrounded by trees. I mean, I was hugely impressed by the landscaping of the items that are already there. They've been in place. I think one person said that they'd been past it numerous times and never actually realised what was behind it. So obviously there's landscaping to be done around this if it's approved. How long will it take before we can't see them? The actual battery set up there, please.
Thank you, Councillor. So included in the application is a 5-year illustrative plan, and then also the fully established, if I can find it. So obviously that is fully established. That's a long time. So that's in excess of the 5-year illustrative plan that's also been included. But as you mentioned yourself, the existing substation, now it's fully established with the planting around that. It doesn't really have much of an impact. And these photos I've taken from Google Street View, because my site photos didn't really show what you needed to see, because obviously the Google Street View is taken from a little bit higher. So that allows you to see the landscape a bit better. But obviously on the ground, it is very, very difficult to see what's behind that existing planting. So in the future, once this is established, that will have a kind of a very, very similar impact as to the existing one now.
Thank you. Can you just confirm that this project here is vital to the energy infrastructure for residents in the attendering area, please?
Thank you. Yes, so obviously it forms part of our local plan, our adopted local plan. That's in line with the NPPF. It's one of the first of its kind in this area, as I've mentioned. So this is definitely something that complies with both national and local plan policy, and something that we want to support. It will feed directly into the existing substation and just provide that backup in times of stress and pressure. So it, like I said, it connects directly to the existing substation and therefore has a direct benefit on the local energy supplies.
Thank you. No further questions.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Chapter 14 of the NPPF directs all planning systems to look into the challenge of climate change, flooding, and the way that we move into the coming years and centuries ahead of us. But policy PPL 10 deals with renewable energy. the renewable energy that we talk of, is this a part of what will happen when gas is completely faded out? And therefore, it would be essential to have infrastructure in as we go now to be able to handle the needs for the future when electricity will supersede all fossil fuels in that in that.
In terms of what they're made of, unfortunately, we can't answer that question. In terms of recyclable, we don't have the information available for that either as an answer.
Councillor Alexander and then Councillor Baker.
This might help a little, I think, Chair, that again, going back to policy PPL 10, a part of it covers battery storage systems. So I would assume, if I'm wrong, please correct me, that when these things have a lifespan, which we don't know about, of course, when they reach the end of that lifespan, they will automatically be replaced with other systems. And there's sort of like a, I don't know what these batteries actually do, but do they whip them out and put a new one in? Is that the way that works? I don't know. But am I right on the right track here? They are an ongoing renewable thing.
Included in the application supporting documents, it is quite clear that there will be maintenance vehicles and maintenance personnel attending the site as and when to make sure that the batteries are operating as they should. I think this is the technology that we need to consider currently, and should anything else come forward and that needs a renewal, you know, a new application at that time. But there is a plan in place to ensure that it is maintained and continues to do as it's aimed to do.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Alexander? Yep, good. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. I can't see it in the report, and forgive me if I've missed it, but I'm sure when I read one of the supporting documents, the applicant stated that this was only going to be in place for 40 years, and then the site would be returned to its original state. Can that be confirmed, please?
I can check that for you now on the application document, so just bear with me.
Whilst the officers are looking at the information, think of a, Councillor Alexander, if you think of a torch, when your battery gets flat, hopefully these won't get flat, but if they do loss of output, you change the battery and then recycle the battery for the metals that are worthwhile doing. I would anticipate, and I'm only guessing as an outsider, that these will have a much longer life. We're talking of tens of years, I would think, in this particular case. Now let's see if the officers are got an answer for us so far.
So the councillor is correct. Within the access and design, design and access statement submitted by the applicant, there is a point there that says that it is intended that the proposed development be temporary and would be in operation for a period of 40 years. Following this, the proposed infrastructure would be removed and the application site restored to its current agricultural use. While we've got no problem with that intention from the applicant's point of view, 40 years is a long period of time. So from a planning position, we are treating this as a permanent planning application at this time. Obviously, if it becomes a matter of debate, we can advise you further, but the proposal as we see this is an application for permanent use and works for the site to be the operation as proposed.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I'm coming back to the question that Councillor Codlin asked, and obviously this is an extremely technical application that's before us, and none of us, well, perhaps yourself, Chair, you might know, but we're not, we haven't got the technical advantage to actually understand this technology. And I suppose we need to go into too much detail, but I really would like to know what we're potentially going to say yes to, and what the batteries are made from. Now, is it in order? I know it's outside of the norm, but to ask the applicant, who may well have the technology understanding of this, to answer Councillor Codlin's question as to whether what these batteries are made from and the lifespan of these batteries as well. I really, this battery technology, I really want to be positive about it and not negative. So, thank you.
Looking with the greatest respect, I don't think we shall find those answers in the NPPF, what they make of. But we've heard the indication of 40 years, and in my own mind, I would think probably 25. That's the life they've given my photocells, but that's the sort of period, I think. Sorry, Gary. Oh.
If you want to answer questions, your discretion.
Thank you for that. I am advised that, contrary to my ruling, if we were, and if I was decided that I would ask the question of the applicants, perhaps they can help us on the construction of the battery and its useful life, I think.
Right. So the batteries are made from lithium iron phosphate, and their useful life is generally 10 to 15 years. They can run a bit longer, depends how they're used, but they probably would need replacing at some point, but it's designed to sort of slot in and out. The battery racks, you can replace them individually.
Okay, councillors, have you got the... Yeah, you're happy with that? Thank you, sir. Councillor Alexander's next on the list.
Yes, I don't wish to drag this out any longer than we actually need to, because I think if you'll agree, we are fairly close to this now. But going back to what we were saying before, the battery storage systems are in our own local plan. And I am assuming, and I'd like an answer if I may, is this some new technology, or have these been established over time? And if so, surely then that will all have been taken up in the maintenance program and etc.
I think it's very difficult to answer that question on the basis that battery is not a new technology. It's integrated components, and evolution, like a computer, has been evolving, but it is not technically new technology. I think the use of batteries on a commercial scale to with the efficiency needed to act in the way that they're now being proposed to act as storage of electricity for the long term in order to help the stabilization of network should there be a power cut, you have a backup store rather than a generator. You've got actual electricity stored in a battery instead. I'm not an expert ultimately in these matters. We are happy and satisfied that they help efficiency of current technology. And in terms of energy efficiency, we are looking to support that on that basis.
Thanks, Chairman. Right, coming back to this, the lithium batteries. These are the same kind of batteries that we use at the moment in cars, lorries, or hopefully buses. Fire risk. What sort of plans are in place should one or all of these batteries blow and burst into flames?
Thank you. So there is a safety note and procedure submitted with the application, which talks through, all of the training requirements for staff and attendants, and what is needed should a fire break out. But obviously, first and foremost, there's things in place to hopefully avoid that happening. And that is all contained within that safety note and report, which forms part of the approved documents.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite happy to come away from questioning now, if we may, and declare that, my question was, is this vital to sort of the district of Tendring in terms of our infrastructure and power supply? And I think the answer is yes. This is an evolving power distribution, and we've got more. It's going to be a wider conversation with regards to wind farm technology that's coming in and etc. But this is about supporting the current grid and technology that we have here now. Batteries is part of our plan, and I think we have to go ahead with this and authorise this. So I'm quite happy to propose acceptance of this. I think so long as the landscaping is actually carried out in its fullest as soon as possible, because I thought that the way that the current landscaping was excellent, truly excellent. You could hardly see the things that are there, so it was sort of helping the environment in terms of not causing a blot on the landscape really as best as possible. But we need power, and I'd like to propose acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. I will be more than happy to second that proposal. I base my decisions here as your committee member on many different aspects of planning. One of them is need, and I think that's quite important. And here I can see a genuine need to have such things before us for the future, and the way that we will see ourselves maybe 25, 50 years' time. So I'm quite happy to second that proposal.
Just a short point, really. I'm in favour of this also, and I'm really pleased to see that there's still going to be a lot of land left over that can be used for farming, so we get both food and energy. Positive.
our update sheet. Condition paragraph 8.2.
Good point.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So, right, can we vote? Shall we do it with show of hands? We've got a proposer and a seconder. Those in favour, please show. As I suspected, it is unanimous, so that application is approved. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to planning application number 22/008204. This is Tree Stacks Farm, Oakley Road, Wicks, which we, of course, went to this morning. And I believe Mrs. Lang's got this one as well, unless I'm very much mistaken. Like Mrs. Lang needs a reserve battery, but I won't say anything about that.
Hopefully you don't get sick of my voice. Okay, here we go. Okay, so application number 22/00820/4. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 3 additional poultry houses and associated infrastructure on the established poultry farm at Tree Stacks Farm, Oakley Road in Wicks. So the site and 2 poultry buildings approved under application reference 20/00194/FUL are fully operational. The approved new access is complete and a significant amount of planting has been undertaken to screen the approved site. The application has been referred to Planning Committee at the request of Councillor Bush due to concerns relating to the significant increase to the existing facility and the lack of local economic benefits. So this slide shows you the application site located to the north of Oakley Road between the settlements of Wicks and Great Oakley. The site is within the countryside and comprises an area of agricultural land to the east of the existing poultry buildings. The site is approximately 0.33 hectares in size. The aerial image here shows the established access and the existing poultry sheds to the west of the application site. And these show the plans of the proposed elevations and floor plan of the building. The buildings would be of an identical design to the 2 currently in situ. Have a typical agricultural appearance with steel portal construction, preformed concrete plinths, and then covered in olive green profile sheeting. I've got details of the numbers of birds in each and how the proposal will increase those, so I can come back to them if there is a specific question on that. I've also got the details of the height if you need that clarifying. There are some dimensions shown on the slide. You probably can't see them because it's so. So the ridge height is 5.75 metres of the poultry shed itself. And then 3 attached control rooms and catching canopies to the west elevation of the main building. That would have a height of 5.75 again. And then we've got feeding rooms, feed bins, and there's also an extension to the existing concrete apron. So this plan shows the existing and proposed landscaping. The existing is in that kind of murky green colour, and then the proposed landscaping is that brighter green to the top of the plan. So the site photos included are one directly of the site where the new shed's to be positioned. This is the site again of the proposed sheds and the accommodation on the site that you can see to the right hand side of the picture. That's a temporary permission for an agriculturist workers dwelling on the site. These are the existing sheds and ancillary buildings. And as I mentioned previously, the proposed buildings are identical in design and appearance. And again, another view looking towards Oakley Road. Again, that's the temporary agricultural workers dwelling there. So turning to the merits of the proposal, the principle of development, the proposal is essentially to expand an existing agricultural use within an established agricultural area for which there is both local and national policy support. This supports the rural economy and to enable the growth and expansion of businesses in rural areas. As such, the principle of development is acceptable, subject to the detailed considerations relevant to this proposal, which I'll go through. Firstly, the design and appearance and scale. As mentioned previously, the proposed buildings would be of an identical design to the 2 currently in situ and have a typical agricultural appearance and colour finish. The layout and siting of the buildings is considered an appropriate response to the existing established portion of the site and the constraints of the site and its location. The application is accompanied by a landscape visual impact assessment. Mitigation measures have been suggested within the LVIA to aid the scheme's visual blending with the existing environs, and the implementation of these can be secured by condition. The applicant has provided sufficient details to secure an adequate level of soft landscaping to screen the proposed development from the north and the northeast. The other parts of the site are already well screened by the landscaping implemented under the previously approved application for the 2 poultry sheds. A review of the accompanying ecological assessment has been undertaken in consultation with Place Services Ecology, who have confirmed that sufficient ecological information has been provided. No objection is raised, subject to mitigation measures being secured by conditions. The site would utilise the existing access approved and completed under the application reference previously mentioned. The traffic statement outlines the increase in vehicle movements associated with the proposed development of 3 additional sheds. This is contained within Table 4 on pages 7 and 8 of the submitted transport statement. I've got some summary of the flock cycle, the movements, and the number of days that HGV movements wouldn't occur. I can go through them if needed. So on this basis, the Highway Authority raised no objection, subject to compliance with that traffic management plan. So officers consider that the development would have both direct and indirect economic benefits, including employment opportunities, 2 full-time staff on site, It would support local employment and businesses from the provision of services and goods to the operation. It would support the rural economy through the construction phase, would deliver a modern livestock production unit and contribute to sustainable food production. Furthermore, once operational, the proposal will provide a significant contribution to the poultry sector, such as poultry feed supplies, veterinary and medicine and pest control contractors. A specific flood risk assessment has been submitted and both the Environment Agency and Essex County Council SUDS were consulted, neither of which, subject to conditions, have any objection to the proposed development. In terms of the impact on residential amenity, there remains a significant separation distance to the nearest residential properties. The Council's Environmental Protection Team have assessed the application and the environmental impact statement and are satisfied that the development is acceptable in residential amenity terms subject to conditions. There is a Grade 2 listed property located approximately 400 metres from the site. Due to this significant distance and the lack of intervisibility between the two sites, any impact upon its historic setting is minimal. Essex County Council Place Services Heritage Team raised no objection, again subject to conditions securing implementation of the landscaping scheme, and also that all ventilation features are to be painted in matte black. Turning to the representations and objections received against the application, Wicks Parish Council raised concerns regarding the additional vehicular movements on Harwich Road and Oakley Road, together with the speed limit of the road. Officers have engaged with the Highway Authority, who have confirmed that a change of speed limit could be a possibility, but this would need to be undertaken via an application to the local highways panel. And only one letter of representation has been received, summarised in the report. So in conclusion, there is strong support within the NPPF at paragraph 84, which supports economic growth in rural areas, promoting both farm diversification . Thank you. I need a battery for that as well, I think. Where was I? Okay, so it promotes both farm diversification and sustainable growth and expansion of existing business in a rural area. The proposal is for additional agricultural buildings in the countryside as part of an existing poultry farm. The buildings are considered to be characteristic of agricultural buildings, are of a limited height and are well set back from the main highway. Furthermore, additional landscaping and biodiversity mitigation measures are proposed, which would largely screen the development and enhance the biodiversity of the surrounding area. It's concluded that the development would have significant economic benefits to both the local and national economy and is supported at both local and national levels in terms of policy. Having regard to all matters addressed within the Officer report and presentation, officers consider the benefits of the proposal outweigh any harm. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions set out in paragraph 8.2 of this report. And again, members just need to note the content of the update sheet in relation to this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, public speaking. We've got the applicant agent or his representative, Mr. Ian Pick. Mr. Pick is here. Welcome, Mr. Pick. And once you've got your microphone on and you're settled, it's 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, members. So this site was granted planning permission for the original development in October 2020 and was developed over the course of 2021 and became operational in September last year. So the existing site's been operating now for 12 months. The site is designed and built to best available techniques for amenity and environmental impact. The site holds an environmental permit from the Environment Agency. The site's monitored and inspected by the Environment Agency, and that environmental permit governs all emissions from the site, so noise, odour, ammonia emissions, how the waste is managed, the dirty water, drainage from the site. So that's all covered by the Environment Agency, and it's subject to inspection and compliance checks. So this proposal seeks to expand the site with an additional 3 sheds. So we produce chicken for UK supermarkets, and the majority of this product ends up on the shelves in Morrison's. According to the British Poultry Council, the UK is only 65% self-sufficient in chicken. We're currently importing 35% of chicken from Brazil, Thailand, Holland. All of these regimes where they're coming from have far lower welfare standards than the British welfare standards. So the expansion of production is going to help with a drive for this country to be more self-sufficient on chicken production. So in terms of, there's a contrast between this application and the application we submitted for the original development in 2020, in that the original application for the 2 sheds had 481 objections. This application's got 2. So I think we've probably demonstrated through the construction and operation of the site for a year that the fears envisaged by the objectors haven't materialized. So one local resident said to my client in January, when is the development going to be completed and operating? And at that point, it had been operating for 3 months. So we think the development is it's operated without complaint and without any problems and any conflict for a year now. Highways has been the big issue on the original application. We entered into a full HGV management strategy with the Highway Authority on the original application. There is a large sign at the end of the drive, and that system of highway management works well. There's been no reported problems with the highways throughout the operation of the development. And it's also important to note that the Oakley Road is a through route for HGVs. It's signposted for HGVs, and there's no weight limit. And we're very close to the A120. So the application was called to committee because of lack of economic benefits. There's a full section in the committee report on what the economic benefits are of this development, but there are existing jobs on site. There's potentially a new job to be created, and then the applicant runs local contracts with plumbers, electricians, pest control companies, plus there's also the investment in the building of the site. So we believe the application is fully compliant with the national and local planning policy. There are no statutory consultee objections at all to this application. It's recommended for approval, and it's respectfully requested that permission is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, no objections from members of the public, as mentioned. The parish council have just put their written objections on your document on page 48. So that leaves us with the ward councillor, Councillor Mike Bush.
Good evening, Chairman, members and officers. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Yes, as ward councillor representing the Oakleys and Wicks, I am objecting to this planning application expansion of this chicken broiler raising facility, as I'm of the opinion that if approval create more harm than benefit, that will negatively impact on this rural community and a wider district of Tendering. This facility proposes to increase the poultry rearing process by 150% to 1.5 million chickens per annum, extending the facility in excess of 72,000 square feet with 3 additional chicken houses, 6 additional 8.5 metre high feeding silos, associated equipment which sprawls across and blights this rural landscape. I believe there is numerous material planning issues. that need to be addressed in relation to the National Planning Policy Framework and the adopted Tender and District Council adopted plan, section 2.2.13.33 and beyond. Policy SP3, Sustainable Design, and Policy PPL3, Rural Landscape example. This proposed expansion conflicts with these policies, which sprawl across the rural landscape. It does not respect, enhance, or protect the local character and distinctiveness. This facility will clearly be visible to the residents' properties along School Road in Great Oakley, the properties and the wedding venue in Oakleys and Wicks. The 3 chicken houses and the 8.5 metre high silos cannot be hidden from landscaping hedging. This is photographs that's taken from rear windows of properties in Oakley Road with the existing site. These 3 extensions will be even closer. Economic and social policy, PPL 13, a rural economy. There is minimal economical benefit contribution that this facility has stated in a design and access statement will only employ 2 persons full-time to operate and manage this site. The supply chain predominantly are Suffolk and Norfolk based, providing, delivering and collecting the birds, the feed, the manure, catching the chickens, collecting the carcasses during every flock cycle, further increasing carbon emissions, not just locally, but between here and Norfolk. I see no evidence to date from this existing facility that substantiated a financial injection that's contributed to the benefit of this local economy. As for the environmental role contribution and benefit are both questionable and challengeable. The attenuation pond will be within 100 metres of the site boundary to deal with the suds, excepting there is dirty water segregation and containment. There is an increased threat of contamination as the pond outflow could discharge into the watercourse, the ditch, which is connected to the Dock River. With the Ivarian bird flu outbreaks on the rise in Essex, in particular more recently in Clacton, this increased capacity of 1.5 million bird process will pose a risk to this community, the natural habitats and where residents who keep domestic poultry and pets within 3 kilometres of this site. We talk about increased carbon emissions and carbon footprint. In November 2020, Tynedale District Council made a commitment to achieve net zero carbon by 2030, a community leader for carbon reduction, introducing Climate Emergency Action Plan 2020 to 2023. This proposed expansion, if approved, will generate more than double those carbon emissions. The vehicle movements will increase by over 100% to 1,000 between Wicks site to the Suffolk and Norfolk factories, amassing in excess of 11,000 miles per annum, excluding straw deliveries to the fuel biomass boiler to provide heating to 5 chicken houses of over 330,000 cubic metres. The vehicle routes transporting this straw travel along the B1414 through Great Orland, Little Clacton, Fort Beaumont and Great Oakley to the site, causing travel congestion on this single lane carriageway. This has been omitted from the transport study document. The frequency of movements are vague, as we heard today, and needs to be quantified due to the increased heating that will be required for the chicken houses, hence more energy and more straw. I cannot support an application which conflicts with the carbon reduction commitment and aspirations that this council has endorsed. Increased traffic movements and safety. Oakley Road, as we know, is a narrow road linking the villages of Wicks and Great Oakley. Sections of this road are national speed limit. This lane is served by public transport, as we witnessed today at the site when 2 buses tried to negotiate passing each other, how difficult it can be. In addition, there is a school bus service that operates at various times of the day, as well as cyclists and horse riders. This application will increase traffic movement significantly in both directions and furthermore will impact on the road safety risks. In conclusion, members, this facility is a remote satellite hub which supports the chicken farming industry of Norfolk and Suffolk. It does very little in contributing to the local economic, social, environmental needs of our rural community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, so that's the end of the speakers. I should turn to the officer to see if there's anything extra that she wishes to add at this point. No, she says no. In which case, councillors, it's your chance to question first. Who do I have for questions first? All of you got your heads down. Nobody's asking questions. Yes, thank you, Councillor Placey.
I'll start. Can I just confirm the economic benefit in terms of employment is just one person? Sorry, I'm looking at you, John, and it's probably the officer. I'm sure that's what the agent just said. There'd be one extra person.
At the moment, we've got it down as 2, but bear with me. We just want to make sure that's existing. Can we come back to you in just a second?
Thank you, Chair. I remember very clearly when this application, or the previous application for this site, when the other sheds were the application came before us, and there was, I think it was said, 481 objections last time, and the report states that there is one representation plus Wicks Parish Council. Can we just confirm that that is definitely only the 2 objections, please?
So, Councillor House, first of all, 1 extra employee, that is correct. Can you repeat your question again? Apologise, I didn't quite hear it when I was looking up the other answer.
Can you confirm the number of objectors from members of the public? Well, I'm assuming that's 1 and plus Wicks Parish Council, is that correct? I remember very clearly last time as well that the issue, and I had grave concerns about it, to be honest, which was the highways issues and the transport with regards to the routing of the HGVs, particularly around the roundabout, or not the roundabout, but the junction with the War Memorial there, which, you know, eventually this got the proposal and a traffic plan was brought in. I think it stopped trucks from coming in from a certain way as well. Can you confirm whether in the 12 months that this has been operational that there have been any complaints from Wicks Parish Council or any member of the public or anybody with regards to issues with that traffic or HGVs, please?
I can only confirm that we've, in the planning department, haven't had any complaints. That's not to say there hasn't been any that may have gone to environmental health or Essex County Highways. Unfortunately, I don't have that available to me.
If you look at page 48, the Wicks Parish Council concern, and it was mentioned earlier, so I have no qualms in bringing it up. They are objecting to the 60-mile-an-hour road past the entrance, and this item was discussed, certainly in my presence, with the highways officer, who said he thought it's a reasonable request, but the parish council should go to the local planning panel, and he felt that that would be highways panel. Did I say planning panel? Highways panel, where it could easily receive some good support. But to get it going, the parish would need to go to the panel, and he thought that it would be viable to actually get it reduced from 60 to 40. So yes, it's the second point in their summarised response.
So thank you for that. So there is a route to improve road safety, but as far as we're aware in this committee here, there's been no complaints as such, or any issues with the HGVs. there was also mention on today's visit as well about the route for supplying the sort of the straw which came in from the alternative area. Do highways have any issues with that at all? So we heard today from the applicant as well that these were coming via tractor and trailer. And I know that there was a concern coming in from the alternative direction from the HGVs. Do we have any issues with that, or have highways objected to that?
In terms of the highways comments, they have not objected to any part of the additional operation, and that would have taken into account the flock cycle over the 48-day period. And within that, you obviously have the straw and the maintenance and all of those aspects of upkeep throughout that period of cycle, and they would have included all of that. The way these operations work are actually quite well orchestrated in order that we do actually have a quite sound understanding of the management of HGVs and other vehicles that are tied up with that. You know, a normal agricultural operation, it can be quite sort of sporadic in terms of needs based on crops and everything else. But ultimately, in this case, we do have a good example, and obviously we have examples up and down the country of the similar operations, and so we have a benchmark there to judge. But I can only give you what our highways experts have given us, which is they are satisfied and they haven't required anything beyond the recommendation set before members.
Thank you. We heard from the ward councillor about potential pollution and issues with regards to expanding this chicken farm significantly. I mean, I'm reading the report, it does say it in black and white, but can you just confirm that there have been no environmental agency concerns whatsoever with this development or this business over the last 12 months whilst it's been operational? Thank you.
We have consulted the Environment Agency, and they've not felt cause to raise any concerns in respect of the existing understanding of the operation and the proposal before us.
Thank you. Wicks Parish Council have mentioned here that Section 106 money or compensation could be used for loss of amenity. Is that realistic? Is that appropriate in this instance, according to planning officers, please?
So Wicks Parish Council have referred to 106 or similar could be utilised as compensation for loss of amenity. We are not saying there's a loss of amenity that would warrant that mitigation requirement or a refusal. So it is not our advice to you to pursue any requirement of a 106 agreement.
Thank you very much. No more further questions.
Thank you, Chairman. I live in the village of Little Oakley, which is not far away from the site of this application. And the route for the straw bales, I know that particular route quite well, and at certain times of the year I very much doubt, there's only my opinion as a local of that, knowing that area, that one or two extras are going to make that much difference, because the agricultural movement in that area can be very, very busy. There can be a lot of those big tractors with the big units on every 20 minutes coming past my house, right up to when they finish doing the harvesting. So I do know the area quite well, and I don't believe that that would actually make any difference to the movement of agricultural traffic in that area. And I have to say that what we saw on the site visit, I had no questions about at all. And it's a good report from the officer. So I will be supporting the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Alexander.
Chair, as that is in the form of a statement, are we actually at statement procedure now? Can I move on? Right. Okay, all right. So we're still in a question then. No, I don't want to. I want to move to statement. Okay. Right. So may I ask Councillor Fowler, are you moving the application?
Yes, that's fine. I'm quite happy to do that. Chairman, I propose acceptance of the application. Thank you.
Then in that case, Chair, I wish to second the application, and I'd like, if I may, to explain why and how I reached that conclusion again. When we arrived at the site today, I was quite taken back by the way that the layout was, the standard of hygiene, other wildlife living happily in now. In fact, we saw an Athenia owl, a little owl, merrily going about their business. So I was very much taken back by the way that this professionally has been handled. But then again, I also agree that where else would you see a farm building, but in land designated as farming land? That is a farming land. And I'm assuming that this would be acceptable in planning terms. Also, as we move away from dependency on countries outside of our shores, we need to get into the culture of self-sufficiency, which we're not doing. And this has very much been promoted by the government, that we need to push on with this. So I can see a genuine need, again, for us to be able to produce this type of food, which is one acceptable to the general public and within their purse level as well. Again, I look at the need, and the need says the water basin. We were assured today that under no circumstances can the dirty water run into the basin which contains the clean water, which is the runoff. The biomass needs no attention whatsoever, because in this construction it's big enough to host any new buildings that may come there. So I'm prepared to second that, if I may.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I was hugely impressed and surprised, really, at the speed of construction that I saw from last time I went there. And I thought it was hugely impressive what we saw today. I thought the buildings, the colouring of the buildings, the landscaping actually really made the site a site which can integrate with the local sort of environment. Farming is a huge part of our local economy here in Tendring, and I think that, you know, I'm a huge supporter of our farming community, and I would very much support endeavours such as this. You know, whilst it might only be one initial job, it is growth. There will be lots of supporting businesses that will support this. I think that, you know, to see this is a success story in terms of a local business, a diversification away from other parts of his farming business. I think that the farmers should be applauded in doing this. And again, this is good news for tendering. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. At the very beginning, when I read the report, I was in two minds about this. But when we went on the site visit today, and obviously we didn't go right onto the site, and obviously because of the current situation with avian flu, and rightly so that we didn't. But as we drove up, it was a bit like the previous application. You couldn't see a lot. It sort of, there were certain things you could see, but as you drove along, if you didn't look, you probably wouldn't see it. I take on board what Councillor Bush has said, and I understand why he has said what he did with regard to increases in transport and everything else. But I would hope in time that transport becomes more environmentally friendly, shall we say, especially now that we've approved some battery storage elsewhere. But and I can understand his concerns with regard to clean water and dirty water, but I'm sure that if anything happened, the Environment Agency would come down on the operator like a ton of bricks and would withdraw his license or their license. So I don't have those concerns. Whether there's 2 employees there and the local economy is supported or not, it's, as Councillor Alexander has said, we do need to become self-sufficient in this country. We have far too long relied on imports from other countries, and the applicant's agent, or the applicant himself, said that they come from countries that do not have the welfare of animals in their concerns, and rightly, we have far higher standards, shall I say, than other places. So although I was in two minds at the very beginning when I saw the report, I am quite happy to accept the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Gulami.
I have to agree with Councillor Baker. I was in two minds, I have to say, having lived in the country all my life and having smells of chickens, but arriving there today, we didn't go right in because of what's happening at the moment. But there was no, well, a very small smell, and there was no noise. I have chickens at the end of my garden. There's only 3, and I can't go out there sometimes because they're making so much noise. It was just quite nice to be in the country where there's a chicken farm, and there was no noise. It was really weird. But I have to say the site itself was very clean and kept it looked very tidy. Hope we could do another visit and make sure it's still being kept like that. That would be better still. But yes, I will be supporting this.
Very much. Let us, I think we'll do a show of hands. I've got a proposer for it, who is Councillor Fowler. I have a proposer, a seconder, Councillor Alexander. And was there anything in the additional sheet that I've missed last time? Don't think so. So let's do this one by show of hands too. For those in favour, please show. Right. Right, and those against, please show. And therefore there will be 2 abstentions. Am I right? Yes, 2 abstentions. So that application is granted. Thank you very much. We've been going about an hour and a half, so I think we'll just have a 10-minute comfort break. So if we can aim to be back by 7:40, please. So this is planning application number 21/02176. It's a full application. It's for land at Moorlands Farm, Great Bentley, where we went to this morning, and I believe in this case we have the planning manager, Mr. John Pateman G, is going to introduce this one.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to have to start with a correction, unfortunately. Side as express public access and open space and managed accordingly. Right, now I'll start the presentation. So the proposal is for 26 dwellings in this rural service centre of Great Bentley, northwest of Clacton. The site is northeast of the village core and services, and it's impressive green. The site to access the village would be via Michael White Way, which is, if you can see my cursor, this road here that leads down obviously into the main heart of the core of the village. And obviously it is part of a larger current estate that is in the middle of being constructed. It's a little further than these aerial photos show, and the site is just down here. Putting that into context on the plan, this plan is showing the completed rest of the wider estate, but I think some of this far end are still in the middle of construction, and there are still construction showrooms and so on the wider site. Indeed, the area just before you come to the access of this proposal is currently being used as a constructed yard and parking for the on-site builders, and ultimately in the original scheme for the estate, that area would become a public open space between two parts of the approved and implemented estate. So essentially, though, in terms of what members saw today, this cursor keeps disappearing, I do apologise. The existing houses around the site itself, both those built as part of the wider estate and obviously the older existing houses, are in situ, and I understand all are occupied. So close up, here is the site. This is a grass flat area, field or paddock, depending on your version of definition, with domestic fencing and gardens enclosing the northwest and south boundaries, leaving a post and rail fence along the eastern boundary and open fields beyond. Oops. The proposal 26 houses would continue the style and characteristics of Michael White Way development, and it would continue the landscape buffer along the eastern boundary, and we also have a proposed public open space area to the west. Just in terms of the open space provision, this plan shows the current provision of public open space that was put forward as far as the previous wider estate is concerned, and indicating in green, the sort of different green, the proposed public open space that would essentially join up to the existing once all the builders' cars and other elements are removed, creating quite a wider area for functional use. Ultimately, one of the important features of the two sides of this public open space to be envisaged and developed was to maintain a gap between the developments and maintain a view through the development. And of course, this would maintain that as well. And ultimately, that's the development in that context. Just to point out, the conservation area is outside of the built form of the development. This, I don't know if you can see this, but this blue line coming across here is the edge of the conservation area. and we are outside of that in terms of the main development itself, but obviously the open space area would be within the conservation area. And if I move on actually to the extract from your local plan, the site is this area here. You can see the conservation area line again. So this would be where the public open space is. And over here was the proposed development. Obviously, this has been developed. And the red line is the settlement boundary. This site is wholly within the settlement boundary for Great Bentley in your local plan. Not sure how clear this plan will be, but just to add, in terms of rights of way, there are no rights of way in terms of public rights of way, at least. There are informal arrangements, but we can't include those. But in terms of public footpath links, these are the dotted red lines on this plan. But ultimately, in terms of the proposal that we're looking at, there isn't anything that directly links to the proposed area or indeed Michael Wright's Way. So the development, in order to come away from that development, you would have to go back through the estate to get to Hexford Road in order to go from there. Elevations, essentially many of the which you were seen on the site visit today as you were going along and looking at the estate before you got to the site. So these should be relatively familiar in that context. They are essentially just continuing the two-storey theme and mixer styles, which are already in situ adjacent to this site. So just briefly going through those. And we also have up-to-date landscape plans now for the development, because it was amended during the course of the application. And I understand there was a question raised about trees but not being retained. Because of the amendment, the trees adjacent to the plot 1, which I think was shown on the original survey to be removed, should be retained, but for the avoidance of doubt, they will be retained. Just turning to photographs, I think it's just a case of saying that's where the current public open space will be eventually when the wider estate is complete, but that is essentially the access point for the proposed development. You can see the stages they're at the moment, and just taking it from the eastern boundary, looking across, you can see the back of the more recent development and the paddock field that the proposal relates to. Oops, sorry, a bit fast there. So the starting point of the development is your local plan, and this is within your settlement boundary policy, SPL2, where there is a general presumption in favour of new development subject to considerations of your other local plan policies and any approved neighbourhood plan. The scheme has been amended. It has removed development from the conservation area itself, and it is similar to the wider estate. There is a level of less than substantial harm to the conservation area, be it very low, but the local authority is required to weigh this harm against the public benefit of the proposal, including, in this case, whether it is the optimum viable use for the site, as per paragraph 202 of the National Planning Policy Framework. In this case, we also have construction jobs, service jobs thereafter, affordable housing, and a public open space area considered to be a significant public benefit that would outweigh the less than substantial harm. Obviously, the harm to the conservation area remains harm to be considered in the planning balance, despite that public benefit analysis. The layout is logical. It keeps the single-storey elements of the development to the boundaries of the site, especially to the south, and pushes the higher development inward. It maintains gardens back to boundaries and existing gardens, and would consider.
The site is located within the settlement boundary of Great Bentley. There are no designations in the local plan that restrict the development of this site, and therefore the development is acceptable in principle, according with adopted policy. The proposals will make an important contribution towards both general housing supply and affordable housing requirements. The dwellings will be to a high standard of design, reflecting the Admiral's Green development to the north, which is now largely occupied. The dwellings are sited so that they respect the amenity of the surrounding area. Noting the officer's comments, the two proposed dwellings in the northeastern corner of the site, plots 9 and 10, are actually very well screened by existing dense vegetation from the dwellings to the north, and have been orientated at a 90-degree angle so that their flank walls address the northern site boundary. It's worth noting that the full extent of the northern boundary is being enhanced by landscaping. The development also comprises a substantial amount of public open space, which equates to over 10% of the site area, and will serve to enhance the existing open space on Admiral's Green. The part of the site within the conservation area will become public open space and will not contain built development. The landscaping scheme currently shows the loss of a couple of very low value trees within the conservation area to make way for an improved landscaping scheme, including additional trees and hedges. However, should members wish to see these trees retained, then this landscaping can be conditioned. Members should be aware that the current gap in the built development to the south of the site has planning permission for an apartment block, which has been recently commenced and will serve to provide additional screening of the site from the village green. As recognised in the officer's report, the proposals will provide economic benefits during the construction stage for local enterprises and also benefits derived from the Section 106 contributions, provision of affordable housing, and improved area of public open space. As mentioned, the site is within the development boundary of and the proposals have been refined during the application process to address matters raised by officers to ensure that the plans have been collaboratively agreed with the council and we've reached a position of there being no outstanding objections from any statutory consultees. I would ask that the committee members follow the officer's recommendation of approval and resolve to grant this application for a well-designed and sustainably located development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we move to have a look. A member of the public speaking against the application is Karen Squires, I believe. Welcome, Ms. Squires, if you'd like to similarly use that microphone and get yourself settled. And you also have 3 minutes. That's it.
Okay. So good evening, Mr. Chairman and members. This regards the 26 additional homes on land at Moorlands Farm. And I'd like to raise the following issues as reasons to refuse this planning application. Section 1 of the adopted policy SP7 of the Tendring District Local Plan 2013 to 2033 and beyond states that all new developments must meet high standards of architectural design, character, and to preserve and enhance the quality of existing places and their environments. The approach taken is to continually build and move the open spaces, resulting in them being inappropriate or poorly located, which do not enhance the village or the development, resulting in the loss of the vista to connect with the existing green and village. The process of building the houses will harm adjacent conservation areas, plant life, ecosystems, with increased noise and light pollution. The houses that back onto Moorlands Farm on both the Admiral's Green development and those on Wheely Road lose any privacy with these additional properties that will overlook gardens, blocking natural light and again increasing noise and light pollution. With the additional traffic volumes from further housing built on this development, the existing S-shaped access road already in constant use with agricultural vehicles, building plant, local residents and large delivery lorries to a local business on this site, the Heckfords Road junction will become increasingly dangerous. The increase to the local population will also have an impact on the other services and infrastructures within the village, e.g. the school, the GP practice, sewerage systems, etc. The persistent development and moving of boundary lines, allowing these developments to expand and not retaining the village character, and are moving towards a significant urbanisation. With the additional traffic volumes from further housing built on this development, the existing S-shaped access road already in constant use I've already said that, sorry, will become increasingly dangerous. Finally, the local plan's housing need has been established as 550 per annum over a 5-year period, and Tendring Council can demonstrate a 6.66 years supply of housing, which is a surplus of approximately 1,000 dwellings for Great Bentley. Therefore, in conclusion, the application for 26 houses are neither wanted or required by any of us on the Admiral's Green estate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Councillor Peter Harry from the parish. Welcome, sir. And obviously, once you're settled, you've got 3 minutes as well. If you can get the microphone live.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And members. Despite the reductions we've heard in house numbers to enable the views to and from the green to be maintained and paying regard to the conservation area, the parish council is extremely disappointed that there feels a need to add another 26 houses to recommend them for approval, particularly at a time, as we've already heard, when there's an acknowledged surplus of at least 1,000 houses for the Tendring's 5-year land housing target. Great Bentley currently stands to gain some 480 dwellings to date, a 60% increase. Set this against the stated aim in the local plan that the key rural service centres, of which Great Bentley is one, will be expected to take a modest proportionate increase in housing stock. I'll put it to you, 60% is neither modest nor proportionate. Currently, about 35% of those 480 are now occupied, and it is quite clear the village infrastructure is already struggling to sustain the increase. The council is particularly concerned with the access to this site, which is yet another extension to the original Admiral's Green development. The site is accessed, you've heard, via Michael Wright Way, crossing land previously declared as public open space. The outline application for 50 houses for Admiral's Farm was supported by an agreement dated the 5th of September 2016 under Section 106 Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and related to land at Admiral's Farm. Schedule 3 of that agreement defined the terminology used in relation to open spaces. And I quote, "Open space land is defined as the land identified on the open space plan and equating to at least 10% of the site that shall include but not be limited to an equipped play area and recreational open space, which is to be used for no purpose other than for public open space, to provide a recreational and amenity facilities for members of the public in perpetuity." The open space plan was submitted with a detailed planning application, and the road crossing the land was identified in that plan as public open space, as already highlighted by officers. I say again, land identified in the open pub space plan is to be used for no purpose other than for public open space as a recreational amenity in perpetuity. The access road for this development does not accord with the use of open space land as defined in that agreement, and were this application to be approved, is highly likely to set an unwanted precedent. On this basis, the parish council objects to the application. Thank you.
Councillor Linda McWilliams, known to this committee, and Councillor McWilliams has 5 minutes as ward councillor.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members, Chairman and officers. I apologise if I lose my voice halfway through. That's still working. Right, the Admiral's Green site was originally approved to accommodate just 50 dwellings But of course, over the period of time, there have been many changes and applications that the number of dwellings has now increased to, say, as my colleague has already said, up to 80 in this particular area, with another 6 dwellings going to appeal to the north of entrance to Michael Wright Way, which is where under a previous application, there would have been a public open space and play area. This does not, of course, include tonight's application before you further joined it for the further 26 dwellings. There has been much emphasis in the report relating to provision of open space, and there being a current deficit of 1.73 hectares of play equipment in Great Bentley. So a contribution must be made for improvements, but concerns are around where the site is to be. The original play area equipment site has now been moved in Admiral's Green to a smaller site, where there is a permission for a doctor's surgery, but there has within the report been highlighted several smaller areas of just open space. Councillor Harry's comments are very interesting regarding the terminology used in relation to open spaces. I won't repeat it, but it's interesting. There have been concerns expressed by residents living on Wheelie Road regarding the failures of the pumping station, not being able to cope with increased flows of foul water from the existing new properties at Admiral's Green last winter and what have you. I appreciate it's nothing to do with planning, but it is, however, interesting to note Anglian Water's comment regarding the foul drainage for this application under wastewater treatment. The foul drainage from this development is in the catchment area of Thorrington Water Recycling Centre, which currently does not have capacity to treat the flows from the development site. Anglian Water are obligated to keep the foul flows from the development with the benefit of planning consent, and would therefore take the necessary steps to ensure that there is sufficient treatment capacity should the planning authority grant permission. I note within the report that under paragraph 6.26, there is a comment regarding neighbours, where it states that under section 2 of policy SPL3 and in brackets part C, it is noted that 2 properties will be impacted on by neighbours. Surely with present day planning conditions, etc., no properties need to be impacted upon. And when seeing the beautiful rural area this morning, you wonder why it needs to be so. It is, though, pleasing to note that through one of the government inspector's statements, when it was agreed that a previous planning application next to this site had been agreed, that the direct view through the conservation area, as has already been mentioned, and Village Green and to the Village Green would be respected and not broken. As Tendring Council, District Council, has now in place section 2 of its local plan, with the required number of 550 being the accepted number for housing, and taking into consideration that Great Bentley as a village now has a huge 60% increase in its housing numbers, there should surely not now be the need for more housing in this lovely village. When reading paragraph 22 of the report, it emphasises relevant points using the terminology of urbanisation. The urban wording is also mentioned in other areas within this report. It is vital that the village status of Great Bentley should not be lost due to the encouragement of building homes that fit in with the terminology of urbanisation. Great Bentley was, if I remember correctly, regarded, and still is, as a key rural service centre. That period of time when we didn't have a local plan in Tendring, but before that, it was part of the agreement that a key service area would only have 50 houses built in it. Just a point that needs to be raised, I thought. Impact on the school, doctor's surgery has increased enormously for the village, and it looks as though that may be even more. So, I think my final comment will be, I'll leave it. I think what has been said is quite satisfactory from what the other speakers have said. I won't take any longer from your time, and that will save my voice. I'm sorry about that, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. I does hope the voice gets better. Right, that is the end of the public speaking. I'm going to ask Planning Manager if there's anything he wishes to add, challenge or otherwise, from anything that's been said so far.
There was mention of the open space area a couple of times in terms of what has previously been approved, and ultimately the access point goes through that area and essentially splits it in two. It will remain open, but it obviously will be, that section would be used for vehicular traffic to access this site. The parish council was correct in that the current legal standing of that area, including the access point, is subject to a Section 106 agreement that secures that for public use. I think ultimately there's going to be a need for the applicant to have to vary that 106 agreement, just as they're doing at the moment, I understand, with another part of the site because the relocation of the play equipment. So they would have to come back to us in order to seek our approval for that modification. And obviously that's a separate matter for us to consider on its merits as well. So the parish council was correct in the legal standing of that point.
Right, thank you. Now, I see some indications. Councillor Baker, I think, was first for questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to follow on from Mr. Pateman G with regard to that 106. Where do we stand? If we were minded to approve this, and I'm not saying we are at all, if we were minded to approve it, then we're obviously approving a full application, so the access as well. Where does that leave the open space that is under a current 106 agreement? And I appreciate what you're saying, that they would have to come back to change it. I'm going to ask the what if question, and I know you should never ask the what if question. So if that change is refused because we think it should stay as open space, this application can't go ahead. Am I correct? Potentially.
That would be the risk that the applicant takes at this time.
Thank you. And can I just confirm, obviously, Mr. Harry mentioned it and read it out quite succinctly so that we knew exactly what it said. Was that from an application that was granted by this council, or was that condition 106 laid down by a planning inspector? Thank you.
I think that was what we approved, but can I double check, please?
Chairman, I do have a couple of other questions, but I'll wait for the answer to this one if it's coming quite quick.
Just to confirm, I think that was a councillor approval. Thank you. In terms of the original scheme. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chairman. If I may, I have a couple further. Have you got the plan of the indicative plan? Well, the plan for where all the houses are going to be. Can you just go to that slide, please? That's the one. Where's the affordable housing going to be on the site, please?
The affordable housing units, as I understand it, are these units at the end of the site here.
Thank you. And one last question with the Councillor Williams raised. The view to the village green that I think we have dealt with before. Before I was on this committee and pre-2019, it was often brought up. The view of the village green was virtually sacrosanct, and now we're told by the agent that there's going to be an apartment block to the south will add extra screening. So all these people that live on the Admiral Green estate were expecting to see through to the village green, and now won't, I'm presuming. Is that correct?
If I may help, the apartment consent that I understood that was being referred to today is this one on screen, essentially 3 apartments to look like a single dwelling. And if I just put that in context with the site plan proposal, that's the building, the apartment building there, as I understand it.
So if I can just confirm then, there'll be no view from this site through to the village green at all, because none of the houses are looking through, and the houses above it to the north, which are on the current site, won't have any view either.
So in terms of the green to the south, around here somewhere, ultimately you have housing along this line, so therefore views through there are possible between houses, but would be restricted to a certain degree. Your local plan, and the site is, in terms of the built form section, is here, and the open space section is there.
Policy SPL2 says that there will be a general presumption in favour of a new development, subject to detailed consideration against other local plan policies. So is that correct, that there is a general presumption in favour of a new development? If this committee was mindful to refuse this application, what would be the impact on a possible appeal, please?
That would depend on what reasons you put forward to refuse the item. My advice to you would be that, as an officer giving you advice, that principle of development would be a difficult matter to defend, in my opinion, but ultimately you would possibly be looking at actual planning harm as a consequence of the development, and what would that be in accordance with your other policies within the local plan that obviously do draw out planning considerations for consideration.
Okay, adding to that then, so policy SPL1, managing growth. Great Bentley is described here as a rural service centre, and I think that was mentioned by one of the speakers as well. Rural service centres in our plan says, and it mentions Great Bentley, some of these villages will accommodate a modest increase in housing where appropriate. Developments will be of the scale that is proportionate, achievable, sustainable for each of the settlements concerned, having regard to the existing size and character of each settlement. Does that, in your opinion, meet the test of that statement in our new policy?
Yes, in my opinion, it does, in the context of the specific location of this site and the context of the development to the north of it. I will say there are other parts that have been examined not that far away from this site that are more prominent, and I would say would fail that particular test because of the impact they have specifically on the characteristics of the village that are more obvious and intrusive. This, in my opinion, would not be intrusive in that context. In terms of the village itself, I think if I was at an appeal, you would have to weigh up the various infrastructural services that are available within this village, including connections in terms of transportation, and I would say that it would be difficult to say that it could not sustain the growth itself. You would be looking at planning harm if you were to go down the road of looking for a refusal reason.
These house numbers, are they included in our plan? So there's 26, are they included in the actual 550, or would these be described, I think mentioned here, as windfall properties?
Thank you. So this is not a site that is specifically allocated for residential development to contribute towards the 550 a year requirement. This would, as you rightly say, Councillor, be classed as a windfall development, but by virtue of its location within the settlement boundary, as my esteemed colleague has already explained, there is general presumption in favour of development, subject to meeting other planning considerations.
Thank you. There was also mention of 2 specific properties that impact on neighbouring properties, and I assume it is those 2 there. In what way does that impact on the other properties, and is that detrimental to their enjoyment of their own properties, or are there any overlooking or any issues like that?
So part of our assessment in respect of impact on existing amenity was to consider obviously how does this development affect existing occupiers and their enjoyment. It was felt that there is a degree of harm in respect of the windows at first floor level. You have a bathroom, bedroom window arrangement for this semi-detached group, and in terms of overlooking, you have the ability to look out of those windows and look to the side, and on that basis you would be able to overlook parts of the gardens of the existing properties to the north. So there is a degree of harm there. There is some landscaping in existence and in the control of those existing residents, but it would not entirely remove that potential intrusion in respect of their amenity. However, you're weighting the balance of the development benefits and, of course, the degree of harm. Overall, we've fallen on the side that it's not so harmful as a single issue to be a warrant defending appeal and warrant refusal. But we didn't want to say there was no impact, because that's not true. We wanted to be transparent and say there is an impact on amenity, in our opinion, from those 2 properties specifically, and therefore that is how it's been presented in the report. But ultimately, our concluding balance of all aspects of this case is that as a single issue, we are not seeking to recommend refusal on that one issue. Obviously, as part of your debate, you may have a different opinion.
So these are 2-storey properties that are overlooking, and we have heard that it's going to cause harm. Depends, obviously, it's for this committee to decide whether that's significant harm or not in terms of this. But at the moment, this development is a blank piece of paper, isn't it? Well, not blank piece. It's someone's designed it, and there's no houses there at all. So if those 2 houses, to remove that harm altogether, if they were single-storey, they were little bungalows, would that remove the harm that you're talking about?
It would remove the potential for overlooking, in my opinion, as long as they are true single story. Certainly, that would remove that harm in that context.
One last question. The earlier question was with regards to the affordable houses, and I think you pointed to those 2 that I've just been talking about, and the other 2 that rows of houses there. So it lumps all the affordable houses together. Is it not our policy to sort of disperse the affordable houses in any development?
So your policy is up to 10. So on that basis, it protects that they aren't solely excluded in a corner and down the bottom of a cul.
Thank you. No further questions.
It's further questions then, Councillor Placey, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Sustainable transport, cycle paths. I haven't noticed anything in there about cycle paths or,
There are no cycle paths with regard to the proposed development.
okay. Are there any cycle paths in the rest of the development?
Not sure. Without looking at the photos again, I can't recall
I don't recall, no.
those.
No. And renewable energy, given recent developments, are there any plans for solar panels on these houses?
Not as a specific proposal before us.
Okay. There's no way that we can, I suppose that's a change in policy. I don't know. Okay. And it's a given, isn't it, that all new developments, all new houses have an electric charging point. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't lean far enough forward. That's better. It's a given now that all new houses have electric charging points for cars.
I'd have to check the conditions because I don't think I specifically conditioned it, but it was in the design access statement that they all would have charging points.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot one question. On the site visit today, we looked at the public open space, and there was a question over 2 trees. I know you mentioned it earlier, or somebody mentioned them. Are we confirming that the 2 small trees that was originally due to be removed are now actually staying in position, or is that something we would, if we were mindful to approve, we would have to condition if that was the case?
While your tree officer sees no value in them, given their size, there is no reason why we can't keep those trees, as also expressed by the applicant agent today. I thought they were specifically saved on the recent landscape scheme that I've got, but for the avoidance of doubt, I would suggest we do put a condition to that effect if you were to approve it.
No further questions. Let me put one. I well remember when we're talking about sustainability and design, on an estate in Great Bentley, the other side of the green, where we, the whole debate hung on whether we could get a footpath through to the railway station. Now, from what we've heard tonight, there is no possible link onto the green other than officially going right the way through to the main road, round that very dangerous corner, across the green down to the railway station. By my reckoning, that's nearly, it must be well over 3/4 of a mile, which anybody living on the estate and working in London, and a lot of them do, would have to have a car to get to the railway station. Is there no possibility whatsoever that we could get a footpath at least through onto the green? I think this is like setting up an estate miles away from it, and I don't believe it fully argues the question on sustainable design the way it is, if you've got to have a car to get to the railway station. But we did ask the question, and the agent was good enough to mention it tonight. There is I won't call it illegal, there is a slight footpath through that will cut us a few yards short by going through onto Moores Close, I believe it is. But I'm still not happy about a genuine footpath through to the station. Really, all I'm saying to the officer is, would he agree with me? It must be 3/4 of a mile to get to the railway station.
ultimately, there isn't a public right of way existing or that is proposed with this application. And essentially, in order to create a reasonable route that you're looking or considering, you would be dealing with other land beyond the control of the applicant, not least because it's beyond the ownership control and beyond the red line that we know, but equally because the green itself, I assume it's registered common. I'm slightly, I'm going to go with that assumption. I'm still learning my way around the district. You would look at, it would be subject to other consents required as well. So ultimately, that I would say is would not be reasonable to require, and is not the proposal before you. I think ultimately, if we were to resist this proposal on that issue, we would be in difficulty as officers to defend that point, not least given the development all the way up here that has this exactly the same, and given this the recent nature of this development, has the same issue in respect of needing to walk, drive all the way through to get to the point of official exit from that estate. I can't say any more than that. I do appreciate that there is a informal cut through. I would not want to say that that is in any way securable or should be considered to be the allowed route, because there may be private covenants or other legal issues of access there that we're getting into. I can only simply say that on record, the only way forward to the public highway and beyond is to follow the road as set.
Thank you for that. I have to accept what you say, except, yes, I accept it, but two wrongs don't necessarily make a right, I will say on that, so I won't go there now. Councillor Harris next.
I've got no questions. I just want to move on to the debate, if you're happy to. Yeah, okay. I have great empathy with the parish council and the speakers and the ward councillor on developments that we see like this, which have mission creep, as I call it, which start off at one size and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I do understand the frustration with that kind of development. However, the position I think that we're in is that this is within our development boundary on our new local plan that we fought so hard for many, many years. And, you know, if there was, you know, a fault in all of this, it's when that line was drawn, and maybe if that line hadn't been drawn where it has, then we really wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation, because it would be outside of a development boundary, and therefore presumption of development wouldn't be accepted. So I see that if we refuse this, I think that we have. I think there will be grounds where the appeal, no doubt there would be an appeal. It would go to appeal, and I think that the inspector would go against us and in favour of the applicant, who would take it to appeal. However, whilst I'm looking at the overall design of it, I think it fits in with, no doubt, it fits in with the rest of the building development site, not the neighbouring one. However, I have grave concerns over the two properties that are overlooking the properties that back onto that, and you know, these people have bought these new houses with nothing behind them, and now all of a sudden they have two properties behind them, and we've heard that there are concerns there because they will be overlooked and people will be able to look out the side windows and look into their back gardens. And I think that that is a loss of enjoyment and privacy, human rights, whatever you want to say. It's not right. And I think that, in my view, that I would not be happy going ahead with this proposal on the basis of those two properties which are overlooking. Had this design been with two bungalows there, or properties that didn't have overlooking windows, then I'd be saying I'd be happy to approve that. So on the strength, and I'll be guided by officers on this, on the strength of those two properties, I'm not happy with this design put, or this application put before us. So I would propose refusal on those two properties, unless there was an alternative way around where it can be conditioned that alternative designs for those two properties were to come back.
In terms of options available to members, ultimately, yes, you can refuse on that issue if you so wished. The other options might be that you can ask officers to go back and negotiate an amendment to those two properties, and then decide whether or not members would like that returned for consideration by yourselves, or you would give us delegation to carry out that amendment and approve the development subject to that point. Those options are all available to yourselves if that's what you wish to do.
I think if the officers negotiated a single story, there would be no need for it to come back. I think if there was anything alternative to that, then I'd like to see it come back before the committee.
That is a possible suggestion. Yes, Councillor.
Can I just confirm if Councillor Harris is proposing approval subject to that negotiation?
Yes.
Thank you for that. We're in the debate stage. I think Councillor Harry struck the nail on the head. 60% increase in what is or was a village. I'm surprised that we haven't decided to up it in the hierarchy in our local plan. When does an area become unsustainable because of the increase, and when does it stop? I've looked through some policies. It's within the settlement development boundary. That counts against us saying let's refuse the design. And I appreciate what Councillor Harris has said at the top corner. If they're amended, then he would recommend approval. But where does it stop? What's next in Great Bentley? I have great sympathy for the ward councillor because she's been fighting development there for, well, since the year dot, it seems. And partly that's the council's fault for not having a local plan in place. But now we have. We should be able to stop any unwanted, unneeded development. And I personally think this is unwanted. We've heard that from one of the residents and one of the speakers, and it's unneeded because if we do have a 6.66 housing land supply, then do we need any more in this location? So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place as to whether I support proposal for approval or I go against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I sat very quietly listening intently, and the questions asked, all the questions that would have been in my mind at one time or another. On the site visit today and in previous site visits, and knowing the village as I do, I've watched it from a rather beautiful village with the largest green in Great Britain turn into a sprawl, being attacked from all sides. If it isn't this side, it's the other side. The thing that's bothering me most of all is, if we continue to allow our villages to be attacked in this way, with this amount of building that is going on them, we're going to end up being a conurbation of Clacton or of Colchester. It will cease to have any village status whatsoever. And I'm not happy with this application. Attack on the public open space, the conservation area. Conservation areas should be classed as sacrosanct, a place where protection should always rhyme, where we're discussing two scabby old trees, where in fact what they are, they're young trees trying to grow into big ones. And that's what they're doing. They're not unimportant and of no value. They are of great value to our society. So I'm not happy with this. I'm not too sure at this moment in time which way I'm going to go.
This is within the development boundary. Just because it's in the development boundary doesn't mean to say that, or it doesn't actually stipulate how many houses that are built there. You know, we could be trying to shoehorn 100 houses into that, and if we were into that tiny space with flats and whatever, then I would say that we would be on very good grounds to reject it, because it doesn't fit in with the local scene, the local character. We could say it was overdevelopment, and that would be quite easy. And we could defend that if it went to appeal. Looking at this size of land with the amount of properties that are being proposed there, whether we like it or not, I do not see that as being overdevelopment. And I think that if we were to turn this down because it's a village and we don't want to see the village getting any bigger, I think we'd lose on appeal, personally. I really do think we'd lose. And I come back to my original point is, had this development boundary line be drawn across the top where those trees are, and it had cut this section out, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because it would be outside and we would be within our rights to turn this down. We would still consider it if it came, because we can still look at applications outside the development boundary, but we would be on stronger grounds to turn this down. And because it's inside, I think that we need to think very, very carefully about turning it down, because we don't want to see the village getting any bigger. Well, you can also, I mean, I could look at my own ward, which is also, you know, Wheelie, which is also in the same settlement hierarchy, and the hundreds of houses that are built there and are proposed to be built there in the coming couple of years. You know, we're all feeling that disappointment, if you like, of houses that we'd rather not be built there, but it's happening. And you know, in my own ward, I have the same situation where the development boundary has been drawn. I'd rather it hadn't been drawn where it has, but there we are. So I think the committee needs to think very, very carefully about turning it down because of the fact that they don't want to see the village getting any bigger. You know, I've given it my reason, which I'd like to turn this down, or give the officers the opportunity to renegotiate on those two properties there. But I'd be very reluctant to vote against this on the basis that I don't want to see the village getting any bigger, however disappointing that might be for the locals.
Right, further questions, or rather debate, I would say, from anybody else? Councillor Placey.
I'm not sure of policy numbers and things like that, but sustainable transport, doesn't that come into play? we're going to get more cars come through the whole development to get to this little development. It's not a standalone access, is it? It's got to come through the whole thing. And I suppose this is something that should maybe come up in the questions. What's happened to the LEAP? What's happened to the doctor's surgery? We're proposing more houses, and do we know what's happening with those?
The doctor's surgery is still, if I go back, is it that one? Hang on. Probably that one. The doctor's surgery is still part of the original estate permission. I understand conditions have been discharged in respect of that facility. I can't give you any other updates of how long, if it will go forward or not. I can't give you any more than that, other than it's still on the table at this moment in time. What was the other part in terms of
LEAP? The
LEAP.
The high area.
So the LEAP, probably best not go there. Let's go to the
I
other.
think that moved to a smaller area.
So
but
the
we're gonna have more
LEAP
houses.
was originally, I don't know if you can see my cursor just there. Oh, sorry, it's not on full screen. So the LEAP originally was in an area here. I understand it's been moved so that it's over here instead. So that's the locally equipped area of play. And then, of course, we have pockets of open space and elements throughout the estate that this obviously comes from. And obviously the proposal is to expand essentially one of those in order to create that larger area there.
Okay, but I find it a bit ironic that North NHS East Essex currently don't respond to planning applications below 50, where it's part of a wider. But I guess that's it. They look at it as a separate application.
Obviously, the larger scheme had its own consultation and considerations in respect of the various infrastructure providers. This scheme has to be judged on its merits for 26.
Right. Further points. You've heard two. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chairman. Like colleagues, I have sympathy for the residents of Great Bentley, what I've seen since I've sat on this committee for the last 7 years. And I have sympathy for Ward Councillor McWilliams. And I also agree with Councillor Harris with regard to what we're actually looking at and the reasons that we could refuse. But however, I fear that it would go to appeal and the council would lose. May I just check, Chairman, do we have a proposal currently? We do. And that's Councillor Harris's proposal. We don't have a seconder. Well, I'm prepared to. I will second Councillor Harris's proposal, and that's with the two changes for the two properties. Yeah. Yep, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Chairman.
So what about other speakers? Question is, really, will you be able to support Councillor Harris when it comes to the vote? Because if we go to Councillor Baker's situation, which would be contrary to the officer's recommendation, we shall have to have a whole list of reasons to overcome it. I will ask the solicitor just to give us some advice.
Thank you, Chair. It is just really some advice to members and something that you're all familiar with in making your decisions. Obviously, we have to rely on reasons for refusal which stand up to scrutiny on planning merits, and we must act reasonably. And part of that includes ensuring that we did refuse. We must refuse on grounds, as I say, that stand up to planning merits of the case, and that are also supported by evidence. So it was just to remind members of that, because obviously unreasonable behaviour also can attract costs awards against the council. So I'm not saying that there aren't reasons for refusal, but just be minded that we need to substantiate those reasons for refusal.
I'm not wanting to step on your toes, Chairman, but would you like me to summarise the proposal at this point? Because I'm conscious there was a couple of other things to add, or are you happy to do that?
Section.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ensure that that was part of the proposal in respect of the securing public open space. So essentially, should we negotiate those properties to be single storey, that we then have that addition to the open space agreement, and of course the retention of the trees as well as stated. Can I just ask though that obviously if the negotiation to single storey for those 2 units is not achieved, that it would be a case that it would return to committee? Thank you.
Right. If there's nobody else wishing to comment, then I will take the vote. So it will be, as per the recommendation on page 66, plus the extra items on pages, I get it right, pages 87 and also the additional items, and the protection of public open spaces and landscaping protection, and this is where we want the exact wording about conversion to bungalows and how it comes back to us. So I'll turn to the officer just to, if he can suggest some words to that effect. In other words, my understanding would be we are minded to agree this application subject to the 2 properties overlooking being brought back to us, or stop at that point. John.
Sorry, you are looking to delegate powers to grant planning permission subject to the negotiation of those 2 properties at the northern part of the site, as identified on the plan, to be amended to single storey only. I'm curious, we're going to have to reconsult as well. We would also have to have subject to a consultation process for that amendment in order to cover that potential issue. If we find as officers that to be satisfactory, then we continue to grant permission. If we do not achieve that change, then we'd have to return it to members.
Okay. Proposer's happy with that? Yes.
Currently, those 2 properties are also the affordable houses, I believe. So you need to throw that into the mix as well. So whether you've got 2 affordable bungalows, which would be nice, or whether that needs to change the design, but we'll leave that to you to negotiate.
Right. Now, I've been heard that before. Do you all understand what you're voting for? Yes, I think we do. Right. We'll do this one by the old method, shall we? We'll call out the names and do it alphabetically. So, Councillor Alexander. We're looking for, at this stage, 4, right? Okay. Councillor Baker,
Abstain.
Councillor Codling,
For.
Councillor Fowler,
For.
Councillor Guglielmi, Councillor Harris, obviously,
For.
Councillor Placey,
Against.
Councillor, oh, it's my own one, and I'm very much torn. I think I'll probably abstain on that one. And Councillor Wiggins. Right. That will mean 1, 2, 3, 4 in favour, 1 against, and 4 abstentions. So that application, subject to those amendments, is approved. Thank you very much. Right. Yes. Now, on this part on the agenda, it is normally, it's to approve the exempt minutes of a planning committee, in which case I normally look for a request for that to go ahead. Under the circumstances tonight, you have already approved that amendment. So if the solicitor's happy with that, I will say that we've fulfilled that requirement, and therefore there would be no need now to carry out item 9 on the agenda.
I think you've had the amendment before you. I think it's a decision for the chair and members to decide if they want to go into a Part B meeting to discuss the minutes in any further detail, in particular the amendment. We can go into Part B to discuss that.
Councillor Baker.
Chairman, I thought I moved at the very beginning of the meeting that the minutes, including the blue papers, were moved en bloc, and I think we all agreed. So I don't think there's any need for us to go into Part B at all. And we finished.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Councillor Alexander. Thank you. In that case, we will take that. That the minutes will be signed with that amendment. So thank you. That complies my way of thinking. So that in mind, we complete tonight's business. Thank you all very much. And hopefully I turn to the